Oh, Dorf, I love you.
The link between emotions, personality traits, and cancer. Absolutely. There is a cancer personality type for sure.
Well, there's personality types that are associated with different conditions, I have found.
Yes. You know? Yes. There's an end stage for every constitution, if you like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay. Well, I'm going to say welcome everyone to the next episode of the health show that we're going to talk today about grief and shock, as they kind of come a lot of times hand in hand. A very timely subject, because I know there's been so much going on in the world on the grander scale, on the greater scale. We have so much going on in the world that we're seeing a lot of people expressing grief and shock politically, with the financial stuff going on, with the craziness that seems to surround society in general. On top of that, though, we seem to also have, as we've discussed it in the Unfuckers group for many, many years, that we see waves of people passing, pets passing, and they always seem to come in these waves. And we seem to be in another wave. I know so many people who've had friends and family who've passed in the last month. Some of them very, very shockingly fast, just died suddenly. Some after really, really long illnesses like cancer, which we were talking we're in the pre-show chat. I would like to kind of take this, I was thinking about this earlier. I'd like to kind of take this, almost categorize it, if you will. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to talk about, we're talking about the grief and the shock, especially together. Death comes in different ways. And I'm talking about grief that comes through the death of a loved one, etc. And there is the grief that comes after someone has watched a family member or a friend go through a long, protracted decline, which is hard in a lot of ways. I know I watched my grandfather take almost 2 years to pass, and it was horrific watching what he went through. But we also have the flip side of that, which is the sudden, unexpected, which is where I think that grief and shock kind of comes in hand. So I'd like to kind of open this discussion and talk about what I call the emergency first aid of that sudden grief, sudden shock. We have motorcycles going by on the highway. That was very, very annoying. That sudden grief, that sudden shock, and the kind of talk about the first aid, the things that you can do to help someone and help yourself right off the bat when we're in that kind of a situation. And I think I'd like to start with you, Anne, because we want to talk with the homeopathic. I always think of, when we talk about instant issues that come up suddenly, first, homeopathy is one of my first go-tos. Like when we talk about that emergency first aid, the homeopathic, because I think that sometimes that is in many ways the punch that you need sometimes to punch through the grief a little bit and the shock. So,
yeah.
And talk to me, my darling, about grief, because it's funny, I just got another email from someone else, one of the Unfuckers, saying they need help with someone who's working through grief. And I was like, okay, aconite is one of them, but...
Okay. Well, one of the first things, I just want to talk a little bit about grief being a process and not a pathology, necessarily. Yes. Grief is a natural response to loss. And it's not something that we, as homeopaths anyway, we don't want to stop that. We just want to ensure that the person can move through it. Because as long as energy is flowing, as long as there's progress through the stages, there's no harm will come of it. The harm happens when the grief is stopped, when it's stopped in its tracks and it gets stuck in there. Like, for instance, if somebody gets terribly shocked and gets a prescription for a tranquilizer or a sedative of some sort, that just stops the process. And that is the kind of suppression I was mentioning earlier that can lead to cancer down the line. And I also want to say, in, you know, seeing as we're talking to errands and onfuckers here, that the way that we deal with the grief process in the Western world is designed to shut us down as quickly as possible.
Yep.
I mean, I know some of you know that my husband was Balinese and he died 2 years ago, and still very sad actually. But see, I can go into grief anytime. But his, you know, the process in Bali is just so completely different. They don't censor themselves. They don't stop the grief process. They let it all out, and very, you know, in a way that we never do in the West. We hold it all in. We try and keep it together. You know, people
stoic.
The stiff
stoic. You must stiff upper lip.
Fine, I'm grand, and that just prolongs, in a lot of cases, that just prolongs the process. So that would be the first thing I'd say to you, that, you know, grief is a process. It's not, as homeopaths, we don't always treat grief. We only treat it when we feel that the process has stopped. Okay, so I just wanted to put that out there first, to say that in this Western world, we do not allow an expression of grief in a healthy way quite often. So, but you were asking about the shock of a sudden death, and I, you know, one of the situations that I had to deal with years ago was being called to a house at about 7 o'clock in the morning. The young lad had been killed out. He was killed. He was run over by a bus, this young boy, and his sisters were in the most terrible state. They were pale and shocked, and one of them was vomiting. And that is a perfect situation for using the remedy aconite, because when you go into shock is a pause. Everything stops, and it's there for a reason. It's there so that you can, you know, ascertain what's going on and make yourself safe and so on. But when you get stuck in shock, you can't move forward. The flow stops. So those girls got aconite, and then they were able to, like, come into the present and start the grieving process. The rest of the family got rescue remedy, which is something that I would say everybody should have in their first aid.
Yes, they should.
Aconite and rescue remedy are amazing, absolutely amazing in those kind of situations. You can't go wrong. You can't, you know, there are no contraindications.
Yep.
Dawn says she has rescue remedy. It is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It brings you into a place where you can, you know, be in yourself and just keep the energy moving without losing it completely.
Even in children for accidents, like little ones.
Oh yeah.
They would fall and they bang their head and they go to that, and a couple of drops of rescue remedy, and it just kind of, it lets them to kind of take a breath and calm themselves. And then you could, you know, when you're dealing then with the first aid situation. But yeah, rescue remedy, honestly,
yeah,
it's a must have.
Extraordinary stuff. It's widely available. Even in the US, I think certainly.
It is available here. Strangely, it doesn't work for me. I sometimes have weird reactions to things. It actually overstimulates me, and I can't sleep if I take it at night. Yeah, but
Okay.
I do the fields of flowers that I was telling you about yesterday,
Yes.
and the flower essences all mixed together.
That's a complex homeopathic,
Yeah.
actually. It's not a flower essence.
Mm.
It has a lot of different homeopathic remedies in it. Yeah, it's
Whatever's in there works great for me. You know, different bodies sometimes respond to different.
And also sometimes you have to play around with the dosage. For some people, just holding a bottle is enough. For some people, as they're sold, as essences are sold, they're stock. They're like concentrates. So you shouldn't ever take them straight from the bottle. Just put a few drops into water or into a water bottle.
And sip.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember, like what Cori just brought up is something that I talk about all the time. When I was speaking in San Diego, it was one of the big pieces I talked about, is the fact of we're not cookie cutters.
Yeah.
What works for one person isn't going to work for someone else. So I've got the same bizarre metabolism. The things that knock other people out, like antihistamines, if I take an antihistamine, I am like scrape me off the roof for 18 hours straight. Opiates don't affect me at all. Like they take the pain away, but they don't affect me at all. I could literally drink it directly out of the bottle without even batting an eye, and they do not affect me. Makes doctors kind of wig out. Doctors really find that one quite interesting. We're different. And one of the things I want to talk about as we go through these shows is talking about the fact of like people have to find what works for them on an extended side, but in the now, like when we're talking about just emergency remedies and we're talking about these things, you've got to try it because it'll work. Maybe it won't, but at least the advice is there of where to start.
Yes,
where to start.
And using intuition, and we talked about this in a previous show, I think, the notion that we have, again, part of the suppression process, we have been programmed out of trusting ourselves and tuning into our intuition, because we know, a child will know straight away if they want to take something, and for adults, very often they want to refer to, doctor or homeopathic or whatever
book or something to tell them what to do.
So it's really important to just get back in touch with your intuition so that you know, okay, that's for me now.
You can retrain yourself to be able to do it. I think we talked about it, the self-selection that animals do in nature, but humans have to be retrained to do it. You literally have to like put a selection of things in front of you and pay attention to your responses.
Exactly. Or teach yourself basic kinesiology or basic dowsing,
That is excellent. That's another whole show in and of itself, isn't it? That's another one discussing that exact topic, because dowsing is a really good way, but it's also, I talk about what you're craving in the moment, right? Like sometimes it's like you have an intense craving for oranges and or lemons, or maybe you're intensely craving, I don't know, spinach salad. When you have these intense cravings, there's usually something to that. And again, I'm not talking about Jolly Ranchers. You know who I'm talking to. I'm talking about, although chocolate is a perfectly valid craving. I always say one. Chocolate is a perfectly acceptable craving when you're craving dark chocolate. That is it. Your body is looking for that hit, and some of it's just an energetic hit, like a little bit of energy. But some
could be a magnesium craving, actually, a magnesium deficiency.
And serotonin, and there's so many other little balancing acts that our body goes through in these things. But it's about, you have to learn to listen to your body.
I was laughing because I was
shock.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying, to go back to the shock, and in those kind of situations, you're probably not in a great, you're probably not in the best shape to actually choose something for yourself, in terms of food or drink, whatever. But Cori's going to talk to us about supplements and stuff that can support you as you move through the stages. So yeah, in a shocking grief situation, aconite and rescue remedy, absolutely. You will then usually see that people move further in. If they need help, they can move into a place of instability where they don't know, they don't know what they want. The moods are going up and down. They can be very irritable, very irrational.
Volatile.
And then the remedy is usually Ignatia, Ignatia. Ignatia will often say, I've got a lump, they'll feel down the line, say a week afterwards, they'll say, I've got a lump in my throat. And a lump in the throat is often stuck grief. It's something that's not being suppressed or being expressed. So that's one to look out for, is that the person is crying one minute, laughing the next, or that somebody who wants to laugh at a funeral is often Ignatia. It's an inappropriate response. They're feeling a tremendous grief, but they can't express it. And I know I've been at funerals where people have burst out laughing, and they're just going, God, why did I do that? But that is an Ignatia response. So that's as far as I'm going to go with the sudden griefs. I can talk about ones down the line, but I think that's where you wanted to start in.
Yeah. Yep. Cori, when we talk about these kind of sudden things, obviously, if we all have balanced nutrition and we're eating really well, etc., it helps. On the energetic, mental level, and emotional level, we can help to go through things a little easier sometimes. But what would your recommendation be when you talk about that kind of instant, really shocking grief?
So first I just want to expand on the concept of shock and loss, because besides somebody dying or suddenly getting sick or watching somebody die, there's other things that can have very similar effects, like being a victim of a crime, or suddenly losing a job unexpectedly, which includes a loss of income, or losing money, losing your lifestyle, getting kicked out of your house, or being in an accident. Being in a fire, having, being in a terrifying situation, being in a war zone. From a physical standpoint, the effect on the body is more or less the same. The experience of the emotion of loss might feel a little different, but the physical reaction is more or less the same. I just want to talk about the physical reaction for a minute, because that helps you to figure out what's actually going on and what you need to do. So with shock or trauma, your adrenal glands kick on. So the part of the nervous system that handles stress, the fight or flight response, it's called the sympathetic nervous system, goes into high gear, and the adrenals start pumping out stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, and that revs up all your body systems. So the effects of those stress hormones are that your heart rate becomes elevated, your blood pressure goes up, your muscles contract, and they might stay contracted, which will then end up leading to pain. It can lead to headaches. It can lead to, pain anywhere in your body, really. You might be clenching your jaw. That's part of the muscle contraction, which can lead to a migraine. It's the most common cause of a migraine. And And then the other thing that happens is your digestion shuts down.
Yep.
Because that's run by the other part of the nervous system. The part of the nervous system that turns on when you're not stressed governs digestion. So when you're in a state of shock or trauma, your digestion doesn't work really well.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes also things like your kidneys and your ability to control urination. And Nadia's asking, shock is associated with the sympathetic nervous system. Yeah, it's a sympathetic nervous system response. In severe shock, you might end up, your body temperature control mechanism may be affected. You may end up very cold, shivering, shaking. And then getting back to the digestion, you may have a loss of appetite. You may have loose stools or diarrhea, stomach cramping.
IBS attacks, very,
Intestinal cramping.
Yep.
Yeah. So Dawn is saying she has a lot of these symptoms, and I definitely, I know that you had a, major shock, loss, grief that may have started, some of this, or predisposed you to not being able to recover from the subsequent food poisoning that you had, because you were already in a not great state. So one of the things that helps in the situation, in the moment, and again, like Anne said, sometimes you can't figure out what you need. You're literally not.
You were in shock.
In your right mind. You're not. You may feel like you're not even in your body. You may feel, disassociation with reality, and that's a protective mechanism where you almost become numb and you go into denial. It's just a protective mechanism when something horrifying is happening right in front of you. So then it's hard to discern what it is that you need. But if you keep things on hand and you just have like a plan in place, you can just get yourself to do it. Like if you have the rescue remedy, one of the things that gets extremely depleted when you're in this situation is your B vitamins.
Yes, I wanted to talk about that for sure.
Yeah. And you do get depleted in many things when you go through this stress response. And the reason that you get depleted, besides the fact that maybe you're not eating because you have a loss of appetite, but you get depleted because when your body systems are really revved up and overworking, they're using more of your stores. They're using up your vitamins and your mineral stores. And the more deficient you become, the harder it is for you to
be able to bounce
function.
back.
Yeah, to function, to recover. So there's a formula of vitamin B that I go to. And I learned this years ago when I first started doing nutrition as a practitioner. I had fallen, not a major fall, but I fell and I think my knee was bleeding or something. I was on my way to work and I came into my office and my supplement sales, the supplement company sales rep, the company that I mostly use, whole food supplements called Standard Process, which are only available in the US, unfortunately, but their sister company, MediHerb, is available in many other countries, so Australia, the UK. My sales rep happened to be in my office when I walked in, limping with my knee bleeding, and he said, "What happened?" And I said, "I just tripped and fell." I was pissed off really because I hate when I fall. I mean, I guess most people do, but I don't like cry. I get mad.
Yeah.
And he just opened up a bottle of, he grabbed it off the shelf, opened up a bottle of this supplement with this bee formula in it, specific ratio of some of the bees. And he said, here, take this. And I just gulped some down and I was like, oh, okay, I'm okay now. So when I recently went through shock, trauma, loss, I was feeling physically very sick. So as you all know, I think you all know that my beloved dog passed away last week, and I literally felt like a piece of me was torn out. That's the feeling I had. So I had this weird empty feeling. I had pressure in my chest, and I felt digestively nauseated. I had been having a lot of the stress symptoms, stomach cramping and loose stool and loss of appetite. And I knew that the bee was going to be the solution. And I took 20 of them, 20 tablets all at once. Holy shit. I felt almost normal within an hour.
Wow.
And I just continued, I've been continuing to take them. I take them every day anyway, because I have a stressful life. But I've been taking, 5 a day. But now I've increased my dose. I'm not really needing 20 a day anymore, but I'm taking them if I start to get that feeling again. So the other thing that can happen as you're recovering from something like this, so let's say the shock is over, you're in the state of loss and grief, you're still feeling badly because your body is beat up. Your body is beat up, and you're, processing grief can be very difficult, very painful, very not fun. As you're doing it, you're just have to start replenishing all of the nutrients that you've lost to stabilize yourself. I think the homeopathics even will be more effective, when you're able to start replenishing the nutrients. So vitamin B complex, and then minerals, just really good quality mineral formula. The alkaline ash minerals are the ones that get most depleted when you're stressed. So magnesium, iodine, see what.
Calcium.
Yes, calcium. The one that I use, I talk about it a lot in my videos, and I don't remember if I mentioned it last time we spoke, but it's called Minchex. It's a weird name. All the supplements I use have weird names. I call them chill checks because they're specifically for stress. I'm just trying to look at what.
The chill pill.
Yeah, I call
literally
them
the chill pill.
Yeah, and it doesn't make you. These minerals don't necessarily make you sleepy. They don't have any side effects because they're minerals, and
they don't drug you out.
Right,
they don't stop the grieving process by turning you into a lobotomized zombie, which
you don't become
actually is what most of them happen.
So you become more functional and better able to deal with everything, better able to process it. So those are my top 2 recommendations. For those of you not in the US, if you want to know, I can give you exactly what's in those 2 products, so you can maybe try to find something similar or just piece it together yourself. And then there's a lot of other, I guess, Danny, you're going to talk about the herbs, because Danny had recommended that I take St. John's wort. So there's a lot of herbs that can just help calm you down and get you through a rough night if you're not sleeping. I actually used, not with this situation, but when my mom passed away, I used CBD to help me sleep, CBD oil. It's like a sleeping pill with no
Sleep is
side
important.
effects.
Like sleep is one of those things that is so important for healing mentally, emotionally, physically. We need to sleep. I think that that's where we do some of our deepest processing of all these things that we're going through. And yes, Gorf. Oh, Gorf.
Gorf.
Always Gorf. And so sometimes you need that thing because what happens when you're stressed, when you're in grief, your mind goes, and it becomes very difficult sometimes to be able to calm that enough for you to be able to sleep.
That's because your sympathetic nervous system
is
the one
firing
that
on all cylinders,
keeps you awake. So if you can't, so that's something else I want to talk about, because I mentioned earlier that I had that weird reaction to RescueCon that actually stimulated me and I couldn't sleep. I was actually awake all night after I took 2 sprays, and I was awake all night. And one of the things that can happen with the nervous systems is that they can turn on at the wrong time. So you can literally lay down to go to sleep, and the sympathetic nervous system, which is what turns on when you're awake, alert, active, and stressed, turns on instead. Or alternatively, you can get out of bed to get ready for work and try to, get dressed, and your parasympathetics, which are supposed to turn on when you're sleeping and resting and digesting, turn on. So that is called having a switched nervous system.
Yes, there's a good cell salt for that, actually.
Which one?
It's one of the extended range. It's Aurum, Aurum natrum. It's one of the Aurum, the gold salts. I'll look it up and put it down here, because they are, I don't know if you're familiar with them, Cori, tissue salts or cell salts.
Yeah, I am familiar with them. I do use them. I also, because I do kinesiology, I'm also able to determine exactly what's causing the nervous system to not be turning on and off properly. So sometimes.
Aurum muriaticum natronum, that's the one.
Yeah. Actually heard of that, yeah.
Yeah.
I've actually found a variety of things that can cause the nervous system to be backwards or upside down or just not
inside out. And
you can have a part, one division that just doesn't turn on at all. It's just down regulated and it's not turning on. So some of the things that can cause that are toxins, chemical and metal toxins, immune challenges, what we call hidden immune challenges. And by the way, when you're
and some of those chemical interactions too, this is when we talk about like things where you see children who have, that infamous red food dye.
Yeah.
They just and my eldest daughter, yellow food dye or tartrazine, which has now been renamed yet again for the 3rd time because parents kept figuring out what it was called and stopped using it. She was literally, from the time she was 18 months old, she got a cheesy. She got a hold of a cheesy at a Christmas dinner, like a Christmas party, and ate these cheesies and literally was awake like till 4 o'clock in the morning, like almost had to scrape her off the walls. She was bouncing. And that's that chemical that we see that hits. And when it does, it turns everything on.
It's a neurostimulator. So is MSG.
Oh, yes.
Which is in a lot of these fast foods. Doritos, I don't know if you have Doritos in the UK, but Doritos have MSG and food dye in them, so they're really, really toxic, and they cause literally cause brain damage. The other things that can mess up the nervous system are what I was saying, hidden immune challenges like parasites, fungus, yeast, things like that. And when you're undergoing shock, trauma, stress, grief, loss, your immune system is suppressed. That's the other side effect of your adrenals pumping out stuff. And it's easier for you to get sick. I actually was having like a little bit of symptoms, like I was sneezing and having some congestion, but I stopped that in its track. I didn't let that happen, but I know it could have. And then if you're not sleeping, you do most of your healing in your sleep. So that's going to make you more vulnerable. And the last thing that can cause, not the last thing, but another thing that can cause the nervous system to be messed up are scars on the surface of the skin.
Yep.
Which can interfere with nervous system transmission.
I remember you mentioned that the last time, Cori. And what about tattoos?
Yeah, so tattoos are included in the list of scars. So it can be surgical or injury scars where you've had sutures, anything that disrupts the surface of the skin, piercings, and
can you switch that with kinesiology, or
you have to you have to do. There's a very easy therapy that you do on them. You actually get some good quality wheat germ oil or sesame seed oil, and you rub it on the surface of the scar. Do a cross friction massage every day for a few minutes, and then if you can have access to a low level red light laser, you can shine it for a few minutes on the scar a few times. That usually reduces the scar enough to let the
Things to realign.
Sympathetic nerve fibers in the skin that realign. And when you have these scars, they may not be causing any problem, but then when you have a shock or a trauma, the scars become active and actually mess up your nervous system. They don't always, but they can. Or let's say you had a scar that was, causing a problem. You worked on it, you did your wheat germ oil massage and you lasered it and it's great and it's not bothering you. And then you have a shock or a trauma.
Yeah.
Turns back on again.
I have a scar on the side of my leg that it's almost 30 years old. And when I lived in Thailand, and I had flesh-eating disease, and I have basically the side of my kneecap, I've got, and seen my lovely scar. There's skin obviously over it now, but there's a hole because the flesh-eating bacteria literally ate. There's nothing underneath that scar tissue, and I've said for many, many years that it will all of a sudden start itching, out of the blue, or sharp spikes of little zaps of electricity coming across it. And I used to notice, like, so often it would be like, okay, why is that turning on now? And I'd start looking at around, like, okay, what's going on around me, my body? Is there something coming up? Is it something mental, emotional, physical, like sickness or something? Why is it triggering right now? Because I knew that there was no reason for it to be triggering unless something was literally triggering it to go off.
So you should definitely do the wheat germ oil massage on it, but that electrical, those tingling electrical things that you have is actually, the scar acts like, if anybody's familiar with electric circuitry, it acts as a capacitor. It actually stores electrical charges, and then they can just randomly discharge, and that's what actually will cause the nervous system to go backwards.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. It's the number one thing that when it was relatively fresh, so say it was about 3 years old, the number one thing that kept it under control was taking St. John's wort.
Yeah, well,
that's nerves, and we think of it as a nerve thing, as in depression, anxiety, etc.
But it actually repairs.
It actually repairs nerves, physically repairs nerves. Myself, I should probably take that.
All about hypericum, Danny.
Oh yeah, I know all about hypericum. When we talk about it, because I'm going to delve into things like also like the treatments when we talk about herbalism, etc. So when we talk about anxiety, depression, etc., St. John's wort is one of the first things that pops into most people's minds. And I've played around with various ways of taking it, from teas to tinctures to capsules, etc. And everyone's got to find what works for them. I personally find the tincture works for me better than any of the capsules or tea especially. But there are a lot of things, and I always say, we have certain go-tos. So in essential oils, for example, lavender. Lavender is just one of those essential oils that is very calming. Chamomile is another one that is very calming. They're go-tos for me, and I will do, if I've got someone who's like really, really upset, and go that I will put, you don't even, not even necessarily, because sometimes when people are in shock, they don't want to be touched. They don't want that. And I will literally take a tissue and just put a drop of lavender oil and just say, like, even just wave it behind their head. So they start to, they get the scent. It's not on them. It's not invasive. That they're, it's just a subtlety that helps to go through. And sometimes that is all it takes to bring that deep breath. But exactly, Peg. Okay. And this is one of those things. If you don't like lavender, taking lavender for anxiety or shock or anything is not going to help you. And this is one of those things, right? It's so important to understand that if you don't like something, no matter how many times someone tells you to take it, if you don't like it, for me, I cannot stand the smell of yang yang.
I love it.
I literally, it makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Like, it's that kind of a visceral reaction. Grapefruit is another one. Now, grapefruit is so useful in so many health conditions when we talk about digestion, when we talk about things like drainage and lymphatic drainage and things like this. Literally makes me want to puke. Literally makes me want to instantly puke when I smell it. So obviously using that as a remedy is not going to work. Now, so there's an aspect of that, like, you have to go with what works for you. If you don't like the smell of lavender, definitely don't use lavender. Chamomile is an excellent. Rose. Rose is particularly good. And rose is a hard one. I always recommend, when people say to me, what's your top 5, 10 essential oils that you must have? And I always have rose on that list. And of course, rose is like one of the most expensive essential oils. It is unbelievably expensive. And if you're buying a bottle of rose oil for $3, it's not rose oil.
Right.
But there's a thing with rose that is kind of magical. Well, chamomile we know is very calming, and lavender is very calming and relaxing. Rose works on a deeper level. Rose is, it's kind of the thing that opens you up and allows you to kind of have a breath. It calms on a different kind of level, almost, dare I say it, almost like on a spiritual level.
That's the feeling I get. Go to the heart center.
It's very much into the heart center. It is. And so I do recommend, even if you, and you can, because rose is so expensive, you can buy a little tiny, like 2 ml bottle. They're like little tiny ones like that. It is really good. And you can take roses tea. So like roses in tea is also really, really nice. It's got a lovely fragrance. It's got a lovely warmth to it. And it is very, very calming on a very different level than a lot of the other herbs have. Those are the calming ones, but we have other, like, essential oils, for example, which work really, really well for grief, that are not the traditionally calming. And that's things like bergamot, which has got that citrus hint, etc. It's more uplifting. It's not about calming. It's more like lifting you up. It helps to bring, cypress is another one that is actually really good for that. It's very earthy smelling. It's green and it's earthy, but it's a very uplifting kind of scent. And it helps to kind of bring you up out of the hole, if you will. We talk about depression and that, like, as a whole, it helps to lift you out of that. Petitgrain. So I love the citruses. I love the citrus oils for treating with, for when you want to kind of, when you kind of need to snap someone, zap them a little bit. Citrus is like that. It's what I call a sparkly oil. Like, it's like, it hits you. It's a high note, and it just hits you in the forebrain. As soon as you smell like lemon essential oil, I swear it hits you right between the eyes. but sometimes that's too shocking. So it's like kind of like instead of orange, using neroli, which is the orange flower, or bergamot is also one of the flowers. Petitgrain is also a citrus flower where they have the same ability, but it's not quite so punch you in the third eye. It's not quite so heavy a hit of zap.
So Danny, the citrus oils could be used further down along the way in the process.
Yes, and that's my kind of like what Cori was saying is when that your sympathetic nervous system and everything's gone flipped, and you're trying to get out of bed, and you're trying to do things, and you've got children to look after, you've got work to go to, you've got homework to do, and you just can't. Like it's like that is where I find the citrus is exceptionally good. Now, of course, my old caution is always we never put citrus oils directly on our skin. You never put citrus oils on your skin and go out into sunlight because they are phototoxic. So even if you start massaging yourself with like lemon oil around your forehead, which feels wonderful, properly diluted, obviously, it is a very invigorating thing if you've got to really think. But you don't want to go out in the sun because you can literally get severe burns from the citrus oil interacting with the sun. But it's a kind of like an energizer. It kind of gives you that little bit of a kick, and it really does, I think, almost like hit you in the forebrain, like boom, it's fast, and it's a shock to the system when you smell it, and it kind of sometimes gives you that little kick almost to bring yourself out and be able to rev the engine back up into processing the way you should be. One of the other things I want to talk about is when we talk about grief, and you talked about it, Cori, and you touched on it as well. There are physical symptoms of grief beyond the mental. There are these physical symptoms of grief, and for example, the heart symptoms, that heart palpitations, heart skipping a beat, heart. People will talk about that pressure, like like oh my God, the pressure. I can't breathe. And sometimes those symptoms get swept under the carpet because people are like, oh, it's emotional. And it's not. Like, it's really important for people to understand when you start having those kind of physical symptoms, you are literally dealing with heart palpitations.
The heart needs the B vitamins.
Yeah.
So that's what helped because I was having chest pain. As soon as I took the B's, it went away. There is something called broken heart syndrome where you could end up in an emergency situation with that. But that's a sympathetic response. So the other thing that I forgot to mention in relation to this, Danny, is the panic attacks where you start hyperventilating. And you have, so you don't realize that you're doing it. You're breathing too hard, too fast, too heavy, which is another sympathetic response. And then you have excess oxygen in your brain, which causes you to feel like you're about to die. And it's very frightening. So when I had one the day that, a couple of hours after my dog passed away, and the same thing happened to me after my husband passed away last year. I was at the salon getting my hair done. I was actually sitting at the sink getting my hair washed. And when I got up, I just felt like I was about to die. And I scared the crap out of those poor salon girls. They were like freaking out. They didn't know what to do. But there was one woman there that had a history of anxiety attacks, panic attacks. She recognized it, and she just started fanning me, maybe drink some salt water, gave me she was like stroking my hair. She totally calmed me down, which was amazing. But one of the things to do, you've seen, like, one of the remedies is breathing into a paper bag. That's to reduce your oxygen intake. And you don't need a paper bag. You can pull your shirt up over your nose, or even breathe into your hands. And that actually usually works pretty well.
The breathing into the hands is one that we used to teach little kids as well. Like when they get that, they've had a fall. They're a little bit, and like, I can't do it because you won't be able to hear me, but that breathing in, because it gives them a little confined space and it gives them a physical thing that they can do to calm themselves down.
Yes.
And it's like a physical, they know, like, okay, if this happens, now I can do this. And having that little associative physical action is really good for kids. Really helps them to work through a lot of those things.
Yeah.
And when
another aconite situation, by the way, as well.
Yes, and exactly.
The panicking. Yeah.
And that's why one of the things that I talk to people a lot is like when we deal with those kind of sympathetic, literal in your heart, and that's when we talk about herbs, is taking motherwort or hawthorn. Motherwort and hawthorn tea together, and it's a very nice, very soft flavor. It's not like, let's face it, some herbal teas don't taste the best. They don't taste the best.
Like diluted shite, don't they?
Yes, like diluted shite. But you can actually get some of them, and like I said, the motherwort and the hawthorn is excellent. And hawthorn, now maybe a little more difficult in North America, but like in England, any part of the hawthorn will work. Whether it's in the spring, you can grab the flowers, the fresh leaves. All summer, you can grab the leaves. In the winter, in the autumn, you can grab the berries. If you can't even get that, and it's like the dead of winter, you could scrape a little bark off the tree. Even that still contains some of those cardiac calming chemicals in a natural source. And motherwort is not commonly used as much in North America. It is a very British.
I use it a lot.
Do you? Fantastic.
Yeah.
Because motherwort, one of the reasons it's called motherwort is it's kind of the caring, and it's used for grief, and it's been used for grief for like thousands of years. And it's the grief of a broken heart, right? And motherwort is one of the #1 cardiac supportive remedies that you give to people who have got serious cardiac problems, who have got heart problems. Motherwort daily. So it works on not only from the physical, of the literal physical with the heart, but also that dealing with the deep grief. It's been used for a long time for that.
I want to say something about mothering, because I was going to talk about it anyway. This is a good segue, but I just also want to say about hawthorn. If you have a tendency to have low blood pressure, sometimes it lowers your blood pressure more, and low blood pressure can be a symptom of adrenal burnout. So after the sympathetic response calms down and your adrenals are like not functioning well anymore because you overwork them, you can end up with low blood pressure and what's called postural hypotension, where you change position and you get really lightheaded suddenly and you feel like you're going to pass out.
That's me.
And that part of that is that the adrenals also help your body with salt and fluid balance.
Yeah.
So one of the remedies for that is we have people put some good quality salt in their water. You can start with a 1/4 teaspoon of good salt to 8 ounces and just drink that and see if it helps you. And that does actually, I was having the postural hypotension for not recently, but after my husband passed away, and I was so stressed all the time, and I was getting up from sitting down and having to hold on to something. So I started adding the salt. And then this week, I've been really craving salt. I really, really worked hard to talk myself out of ordering pizza for lunch today. I was this close.
And chips covered in salt. Like give me the saltiest bar peanuts you can find.
I just ate salt instead.
Cori,
yes.
Cori, the third remedy in my list is natrum muriaticum, which is salt.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a major grief remedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been craving salt for 2 weeks. So, but just getting back to the mother, and I use motherwort for tachycardia. I use it along with bugleweed and hyperthyroid when people are having tachycardia and hyperthyroid. We'll add the motherwort to their program. But just the mother. So using the term mother, I actually. Leonida is saying your doctor said no salt. They don't understand that
You need
salt,
to ignore your fucking doctor, okay?
sodium is an essential nutrient. Your whole nervous system runs on salt. It's an ion.
It blows my mind that there are still doctors out there telling people, you have a heart problem and you have high blood pressure, so no more salt for you. And I'm like,
Right.
that's how you kill someone.
They're right in that if you're eating the processed garbage salt, then that is not good for you. But the salt that comes from the earth, from the ocean, the Himalayan pink salt, the sea salt. I have a really good video on this topic. Not to like be bragging or whatever, but I just really like this video on my YouTube health channel called "What Happens When You Don't Eat Salt." And
I've seen it. It is awesome.
I see this in patients
Leonida, go watch that video.
So many people come in telling me that they are avoiding salt. We're like just adding salt to everybody's program now because it's just such a widespread issue. And salt deficiency can cause, among other things, excessive sweating, inability to absorb fluid, chronic dehydration. High blood pressure.
Number one. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, just getting back to the mothering thing, one of the things that I did do for myself, and by the way, I made a video about this too, about dealing with, shock and trauma and grief and what I did for myself to help myself. I asked myself if I could go, I don't really have family. I just don't, the family that I have are all, vax holes, and they're all, people that I don't want to spend time with.
we understand, love. We all understand.
So I really don't have anyone to, put their arms around me and hold me and let me cry. I just don't have anyone. Mm-hmm. So I said to myself, if I did have somebody like that, what would I want them to do for me? If I could go somewhere
good
to somebody's house or somebody who could be nurturing, what would I want? And I literally made a list of what I would want. I would want them to feed me, homemade soup, and I would want them to tuck me into a soft blanket and, give me a foot massage and keep me warm, because I was so cold. I was so cold for a week. I was just shivering for a week, and that's not like me. I don't run cold usually. So I just did it for myself as best I could. I have an infrared heating pad. So I turned that on, and it felt so nice to lay on it. And I wrapped myself in a fuzzy blanket, and I drank some, bone broth, and I love peppermint. So I drank some peppermint tea.
Nice.
And dabbed my head with peppermint oil. That instantly gets rid of headaches for me.
Yep.
Yeah, Paul was saying he goes into the Great Green and gets hugs from nature. So I was forcing myself to go to I have another dog still. So I forced myself to take him to the park and try to keep things okay for him. And sometimes I'll just imagine that I'm in a forest and I'm inhaling the smell because I love the way that smells, and I haven't got to do that in a long time. And so I did the best I could to self-nurture, which it was helpful. I'm proud of
I like that idea of the list. I really like that idea of the list. That is a very, very useful idea. I'll put that on my list.
I have people, so I have patients do this all the time when we're trying to help them stop emotional eating. So a lot of people
Yep.
binge or overeat or eat bad stuff to handle emotions. So with shock and trauma, a lot of times people lose their appetite, but then when they go into grief, they could go either way. They could have a low appetite, or they could start, if they're food abusers, they could start using food to not feel things, the way other people use drugs, and sugar is very addictive. So we actually have them make a list of things that help them to feel nurtured, that don't involve eating something bad or doing harm to themselves.
Don't involve chocolate or candy.
Right.
Or French fries.
Right. Exactly. So, we might have them do things like, just distraction sometimes is very useful. So I've been doing that.
And I do want to talk about that too, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I found a stupid show on Netflix called Working Moms that is just making me laugh. So I'm forcing myself to watch something that distracts me and makes me laugh. And that's one of the things that I recommend, because so many people are watching dumb shows now. They might as well use it for a purpose. And then there are some people who say, well, sitting down and watching a show is what makes me want to eat. Like, it triggers me to want to eat. Okay, so don't do that. Maybe an Epsom salt bath. Maybe find a game that's fun to play. That needs both hands.
Learn. I always talk about learning a hobby, learning something that is like simple macrame, like literally.
Guys were talking about knitting the other night.
In grade 3 with strings, and you tie it to the chair, and you just doesn't matter. Learn how to braid your hair. Like something that
keeps your hands busy.
Even things like, and I know people hate them, but like fidget spinners, not the crappy ones, but like my eldest son has one that his sister bought him, and it's just a weighted pencil. It has a weight on both ends, and he spins it around his fingers. So he's learned how to do all these little tricks. And he loves it. And he uses it all the time. That's one of his coping mechanisms. He will sit there and but he's also taught himself how to do all these little fun, little cool tricks that look really awesome. Those little types of things like that are invaluable because they keep your brain active too. Yeah. Like as you're doing it, whether you're braiding, macrame, spinning something around your hands, your brain is working on a different level.
Right.
And it's active, and you're dealing with muscle memory and that, and it takes that away from the bag of chips, right? Like it takes that out of the equation.
Yeah, so I play word games, I do crossword puzzles, keep totally focused on that. I'm not thinking about anything else. I don't need anything else, but you have to find what's going to work for you. So a lot of people don't like word games. A lot of people can't even read anymore. So that's not going to work for them. But yeah, and then also if you find a sport or an exercise that you enjoy, I'm not talking about forcing yourself to, exercise, do something that you don't like, that's painful, that is.
Exercise doesn't have to be sit-ups. Exercise doesn't have to be, it can be all kinds of, like in our family, everyone in our family swings poi. And that's where it's the strings on the balls and smile. She's watched them all go crazy in our house. And exercise is anything that helps you to just be moving.
Right.
Learn how to hula dance. Literally, if that floats your boat, put on some, because God knows there'll be videos on YouTube teaching you how to do the hula. Learn how to do the hula. Something that is not, oh my God, I'm sweating buckets and now my muscles are sore and I don't want to. Just something.
Dancing, if you like to dance. Yeah, I mean, I love to walk, so that's my go-to. But, they have these things called rebounders. They're little mini trampolines. They're not expensive. So it's a lot of fun. It feels good. The motion is helpful. Those things also help with drainage. So your lymphatics.
Yeah.
It moves stuff out of the body, and it helps lighten everything up, and you respond better to nutrition. You respond better
It's
to.
funny. It's
Yeah.
you start giggling. You kind of can't be grumpy on a mini tramp. Like you can't really jump around up and down on one of those things and have a scowl on your face. You're going to start laughing sooner or later.
Yeah, like having a pillow fight. You can't help but laugh.
And I want to say that if you find yourself in a position where you can't do any of this, because I remember in my mid-20s, I went through a really bad relationship breakup, and this was, it was a very sudden and blah blah. It was awful at the time, one of many. Take yourself down to a Whole Food shop that sells batch flowers. You can read the list yourself, and there's some amazing batch flowers like white chestnut for persistent. You know, if your mind is going around like a rabbit on a wheel, that flower essences are very, very subtle. You can't do any harm. I mean, you might, like Cori, you know, you might find that you have to be careful with your dosage, but there will be something. I think the most important thing to know is that there will be something that will help you.
That can bring you out of it.
Yeah. And that's that intuition again too, right? Like you have to listen to those little things. And one of the things I talk about is like, go sit under a tree. Go sit under a tree and do some deep breathing, that kind of grounding. I don't necessarily mean that as grounding literally, but that there's something about putting your back against a tree, sitting on the ground, close your eyes, and just breathe and just allow the moment. Allow the moment of that peace to just be there for you. Maybe you have a favorite flower, and that's one of the other things I've saw. Like scent is obviously, as an aromatherapist, scent is important. Maybe you have a favorite flower.
Actually, Danny,
get a little bouquet of flowers and enjoy the beauty of a flower or a plant. Beauty of anything like that. Yes.
We have talked a lot recently about how ugly our environment is in general.
Yes.
And if you're really in a funk, you can find something that's beautiful to look at, like a flower or a painting or something, and just stare at it because as you look at something beautiful, your energy expands.
Yeah.
And as your energy expands, because we are attracting back situations on a however many trillion times a second says
is it 21 trillion times a second? Says Cliff.
Says Cliff. So, you know, if you can look at something that even expands your energy a little bit, the next second will be a little bit bigger.
And if you're fully unable to do it, like if you're really shut down, the best thing to do is to reach out to somebody who can guide you. So, you know, that the day that I took the 20 of the vitamin B, it was after I had a conversation with my best friend who does what I do. She does the exact same thing I do. We're like twins. She doesn't live anywhere near me. She's in a different state. But she had given birth to twins 5 years ago, and one of the babies was stillborn.
Oh no.
And when I was telling her how I felt when I lost my Heidi, she knew exactly what, you know, like she said, I know exactly what you're feeling right now. And she's the one that actually said, did you take any of the B? And I'm like, no, shit, I didn't even think about that. She's like, go take it right now.
Take it right now.
That's a really good point, Cori. I know Danny and Danny, we do need to remind each other, even though we know things.
Right. That's because the doctor who treats himself has a fool for a doctor and an idiot for a patient.
Exactly. Oh, literally, the messages back and forth between Ann and I will be like, I feel like this. I'm like, did you take? Like, you're sitting in your office where you've got about 4,000 remedies behind you. Have you thought about taking one? No. I'm like, turn around, go take one. And it's the same thing. Like a cabinet full of essential oils and remedies and homeopathics. And how many times you sit there going, oh, I feel like this. Oh, have you done anything? Yeah, no.
Yeah, because that can
Guilty.
happen.
Guilty as charged. Guilty as charged.
Mm-hmm.
An idiot for a doctor. Yes.
Somebody told me that when I graduated from chiropractic school. They passed down the wisdom of the ages. They sat me down they're like, I'm going to tell you the most important thing you'll ever hear. And it's true. It's, when you're in a state like that, sometimes it's hard to apply logic, to be rational, right? That's part of the whole process. Is you may not feel rational, you may have brain fog, you may have trouble thinking. So even though I know that that's something that will be helpful, I wasn't able to.
It's not there because you're not there. In that moment, you're not there.
Exactly.
That's why that's one of these. It's so important for us to be able to, when you're helping someone else, it's one thing to be there for them, whether it's physically or on the phone, etc. But the other part of that is that, like, if you can help somebody by saying, listen, why don't you go make yourself a cup of tea?
Right.
Go make yourself a cup of tea, put a big glop of honey in there and a piece of toast.
Right.
Like, have you eaten today? Go toast with peanut butter. Like, whatever is the simplest, easiest way of doing that, get something into you, go do that. Go have a glass of water. When was the last time you had a glass of water?
Right. Stay hydrated.
Have a glass of water.
Yeah.
Those little things, because like you said, when you're not there and when you're going through the trauma, the anxiety, the shock, many times you are literally not there and you can't think of that for yourself. And you need that other person to turn around and say, it's okay. But I would let me make you a cup of tea, or you go make a cup of tea if the person is not physically there with you. You need to go rest. You need to go to sleep. Take this edible and go to sleep now, right? Just like, you need to get some sleep. No, yeah, it's important.
Wonder if anyone has any questions for us from.
Hold on just 1 second, because we're gonna get right there, and that's exactly where I was gonna go next. That's exactly where I was gonna go next. But for the public part of the discussion, this will be the end of the discussion. The members will stick around and we will do question and answer. And of course, that will be available on RKX TV and Unfuckers Unite. And we will definitely be we have so many topics just in today. We have so many topics that are like, oh, we need to talk about this. We need to talk about that. Oh, we definitely need to talk about this. And even this topic, we've only just
scratch the surface.
Like, we've literally only really talked about that instant what to do when. We will definitely be coming back around on this. For anyone who's tuning in on all the various video stations, in the description below there will be a link to an article on RTS Earth, and I will have all of Anne's website, and we'll have Cori's website and her YouTube channel and my websites, so that if you have any questions, if you want to go look up Cori's fabulous video on salt, please do. Please go find that video. Actually, Cori, would you do me a favor and in Messenger drop me the link to that video, and I will make sure specifically that video for sure will be in the article that will go along with this show.
And the one on that I just did on trauma.
And the one that you just did on grief. Yes, I will put both of those in. I want to thank you, ladies. I want to thank you. It's always such a great conversation.
Yes.
And everyone else, hang out. We'll say goodbye to everyone out there in video land, and we'll keep talking.